Facing intense internal pressure, DNC releases post-election autopsy that criticizes Kamala Harris. Add AP News as your preferred source to see more of our stories on Google. Add AP News on Google. Add AP News as your preferred source to see more of our stories on Google. Share New York at Kamala Harris wrote off rural America during the 2024 presidential campaign and failed to attack Donald Trump with sufficient negative firepower, according to a long-awaited post-election autopsy released Thursday by the Democratic National Committee that did little to quell Democrats' concerns about the direction of their party. The committee's chair, Ken Martin, shared the 192-page report only after facing intense internal pressure from Democratic operatives frustrated with his leadership. Martin had originally promised to release the autopsy months ago, only to keep it under wraps because he worried it would interfere with Democrats' mobilization to take back control of Congress in the midterms. "I didn't want to create a distraction," Martin wrote on Substack. "Ironically, in doing so, I ended up creating an even bigger distraction. And for that, I sincerely apologize." He said the report was withheld because it was not ready for prime time, and the DNC covered the document with annotations and disclaimers saying it was incomplete and unsubstantiated. The report's release did nothing to temper irritation at Martin, and Democratic insiders were exasperated as they spent the day talking about a two-year-old election instead of focusing on Trump's unpopular war in Iran, surging prices, or the backlash against the president's White House ballroom. Your browser does not support the iframe HTML tag. Try viewing this in a modern browser like Chrome, Safari, Firefox, or Internet Explorer 9 or later. Indeed, the initial reaction to the report was a mix of bafflement and anger over Martin's handling of the situation. Read more. The execution, the rollout, and the cover-up are indicative of how Ken Martin is fundamentally not up to the task, said Amanda Littman, who leads the Democratic allied organization Run for Something. He will be incapable of rebuilding the trust necessary to facilitate a Democratic primary in 2027-2028. Although the autopsy criticizes Democrats' focus on identity politics, it sidesteps some of the most controversial elements of the 2024 campaign. The report does not address former President Joe Biden's decision to seek re-election, the rushed selection of Harris to replace him after he dropped out, or the party's acrimonious divide over the war in Gaza. "I am not proud of this product. It does not meet my standards, and it won't meet your standards," Martin said. "I don't endorse what's in this report or what's left out of it. I could not in good faith put the DNC's stamp of approval on it. But transparency is paramount." During a conversation with staff Thursday, Martin announced that the report's primary author, consultant Paul Rivera, was no longer working with the DNC, according to a person on the call not authorized to speak publicly about the private discussion. A spokesperson for Harris did not respond to a request for comment. Report says Democrats don't listen to all voters. The post-election report, which was first released by CNN, calls for a renewed focus on the voters of Middle America and the South, who have come to believe they are not included in the Democratic vision of a stronger and more dynamic America for everyone. Millions of Americans are suffering from poor access to health care, manufacturing and job losses, and a failing infrastructure, yet continue to be persuaded to vote against their best interests because they do not see themselves reflected in the America of the Democratic Party, the report says. The autopsy points to a reduction in support and training for Democratic state parties, voter registration shifts, and a persistent inability or unwillingness to listen to all voters. Thursday's release comes as Martin confronts a crisis of confidence among party officials, who are increasingly concerned about the health of their political machine barely a year into his term. Some Democratic operatives have had informal discussions about recruiting a new chair, even though most believe that Martin's job isn't in serious jeopardy ahead of the midterm elections. Few were satisfied with how Martin navigated the report's release. Why not say this in 2024, or bring in more people to finish it, instead of turning this into the dumbest media cycle for 7-8 months? Democratic strategist Steve Shale wrote on social media, "Were Democrats too nice? The report found that Harris and her allies failed to focus enough on Trump's negatives, especially his felony convictions. This was part of a broader criticism that Democrats' messaging is too focused on reason and winning arguments, even in cycles when the electorate is defined by rage. There was a decision in the 2024 Democratic leadership not to engage in negative advertising at the scale required, the report states. The Trump campaign and supportive super PACs went full throttle against Vice President Harris, but there was not sufficient or similar negative firepower directed at Trump by Democrats. The report continues. It was essential to prosecute a more effective case as to why Trump should have been disqualified from ever again taking office. The grounds were there, but the messaging did not make the case. The DNC appeared to reject these conclusions, adding annotations like no sourcing or evidence provided. Trump's attack on Harris' transgender policies were cited